Welcome to another episode of Gender Stories. And as ever, I am delighted and excited to introduce our guest. And today we have GenderMeowster with us, who is a trans mask AUDHDer disabled content creator with comfy, cozy, moderated spaces. And they really do 500 gazillion things. So I don't even know how to summarize it in your bio.
That's fair.
So,
Me neither. I ran out of characters. That's why it's like half a word. It's like a bunch of shortened half words.
So as a fellow AUDHD, I really feel the doing too many things, but I would love for you to start by saying some of the things that you do, because you do so many wonderful things, from podcasting to streaming to mutual aid. So yeah, give us an overview of all the wonderful things that you do.
Sure. A friend of mine helped me summarize this recently as an online peer support network for disabled trans people. I might have missed the word intersectional in there, but it's basically, if you think of any LGBTQ center in any major town, you walk in and there's a bunch of stuff going on, right? There's the living room where you can kind of hang out. There's a special event schedule. They have special pride events, what have you. Maybe they have mental health services or, medical services for people accessing HRT or surgeries. And it's all kind of happening in one place, right? It's a community building. And so, the combination of like the GenderMeowster brand and Meowster's Clouder, which is our Discord server, is an online version of all of that. So it really is like 15 projects in a trench coat. But it all serves the greater purpose of taking care of the trans community and all of our intersectional identities along the way.
That is beautiful. I also love the description of 15 projects in a trench coat. I was like, yeah, I feel familiar with that. Well, let's start from kind of one of maybe most straightforward project, which is your podcast, which is the Genderful podcast.
Sure.
And I'm always curious because there are not that many podcasts run by trans podcasters. And so I'm always curious about when you started it, why you started it, what was your intention with the Genderful podcast? Yeah, all of those questions.
Totally. Well, I started streaming nearly 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years in July of 2023. I started streaming nearly 3 years ago because we were making tabletop games that were really fun. And I wanted to share our like trans queer storytelling with the world, because I'm like, we're telling queer stories. This needs to be documented. Well, eventually, just burnout and, a bunch of stuff happened, including Dungeons and Dragons being racist and a lot of anti-racism back in 2020. And as a group, we decided, okay, we're going to take a break from this. We're going to do some research and figure it out, whatever. And, we did find some other like game systems to try out. And we just got to a point where we were just tired. We just couldn't keep producing that type of show. And so I realized I needed to pivot, and I had already gotten a taste for making podcasts and how fun that can be. For me as an ADHD person, it's way easier to listen to something while I'm doing things than to like sit and read a book with my face, or just like be still and do one thing. It's like I need to be doing 3 things at once always. Like, so podcasts are a great way to do that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes. I have my fidget too. Mine's not quite as gay colors as yours, but I have my little thing I'm squishing in my hands. It's quieter than other toys, so I like to use this one when I'm doing podcasts. So, I wanted to capture stories of gender diverse people, but also I wanted to focus on our special interests, because so often the trans, and I'm using trans expansively here, not just trans, like all gender diverse, blah, blah, for me is lumped into trans. Not everybody agrees on that. But I'm just going to use it as a shorthand so that I don't have to say all of that again the rest of the day.
You don't want to say trans and or non-binary and or gender expansive every time?
Right, right. Or agender or bigender. Right. So many genders. For more information on all of that, you should read Alex and Meg's book about gender. It's great. There's an audiobook version that you can listen to while you do your Legos. That's what I did. It's a wonderful time.
Thank you. I know I'm so excited that we convinced our publisher to do an audio version of that book. I'm trying to convince them to do more audiobooks.
Always audiobooks forever. That's my
Hmm.
opinion. It's such an important accessibility need. Like,
Yes.
if you're writing about neurodivergence, you just should always do an audiobook.
Hmm.
That's my opinion that nobody asked for, but I'm giving it anyways.
No, I like it. Yeah.
Because, I how many books have I read with my face in the last year? In the last decade? Maybe one. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
How many audiobooks have I listened to? Probably 3 to 20 a year, depending on which year we're talking about in the last 10 years. So it's way easier for me to listen to a book. And I'll re-listen to books too, because they're so fast. It's like, oh my God, I can read a book in 5 hours. Are you kidding? Just listen to this on a long drive. That's fine. Um, yeah. So I wanted to make the show because I wanted to not only tell our stories, which is important because we need more representation in the world, but to invite people to talk about our special interests. Because when I realized I was non-binary, I had this other pile of identities crash in on my head over time as I found myself in that awakening. Like I was like, oh, I'm autistic. Oh, I'm ADHD. Oh, I'm pansexual. Oh, I'm sort of also a gay man sometimes. Oh, maybe there's some like plurality, something going on there too. I don't know. Like, it's just like, so part of me is a gay man, but then part of me is a lesbian, but then also part of me is pan, and that's a fun time. Um, it's gender is a journey. So is sexuality, and so often, if we're represented at all in major media, it's either our coming out stories or it's tragedy. And so I just
Hmm.
want to like be a little guy. Like, let's just be little guys together, like be cute and do whatever. um, I feel like talking about our special interests not only is the Venn diagram of like neurodivergent people, like and trans people, almost a circle.
It's almost a circle. That's
It's
real.
almost a
Yes.
circle in the Venn diagram. So most of us can info dump about something,
Hmm.
right? Most of us have a special interest that we can just go on and on forever about because we're excited. And so I figured spending time with trans people, not only hearing their stories and how they got to where they are today, but also have them talk about their interests, um, it highlights trans joy. It highlights
Hmm.
trans thriving. Like, not only do we get to educate each other about things, like there have been people that like I have no idea what plurality is, and then now we've done a few episodes that are like, oh my gosh, I know so much more now. But like, it gives us an opportunity for us to be in a trans space, but that's not the point. Like, the point
Hmm.
is whatever our special interest is and getting to share our hobbies with one another or share our special projects or what have you. And we get to be whole people holistically. It's not just about the identity, but it's like that identity piece being established first is kind of what makes the space safe for us to coexist, because there's all of this stuff that we culturally understand. We understand dead names. We understand misgendering. We understand like that people might want different flavors of gendered compliments regardless of their gender presentation. And it might be important to know someone's like preferences and keep track of that and have a culture around keeping track of that. Like in the Discord server, we have roles about gender identity and all of those things. So then when you're addressing someone, you can address them correctly every time. It's written down. They have a whole pile of notes attached to their profile you can look at any time. And so, it gets easier to address people, each other correctly, because all
Hmm.
the information is there and you don't have to spend 30 minutes explaining it every time you interact with someone. It's just written down for you. It's great.
I love that. It feels like the Genderful podcast in a way. It's kind of this container. And then, within that container,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you said, it's exploring all this wonderful special interests that we all have. I love the idea of special interests. It's like when I first kind of explored my own neurodivergence, I was like, I don't think I'm autistic because I don't have a special interest. And my whole family looked at me and I was like, hang on, let me think. Oh, humans. Humans are my special interest. Everything I've ever done, it's around understanding people, whether it's
Oh
like
my
my first
gosh.
degrees in linguistics and then,
Yeah.
I was studying to be a therapist. Oh, first I was a researcher and then studying to be a therapist. I was like, oh yeah, humans are endlessly fascinating to me.
Yeah. 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 Well, and what I love about that is I got 2 degrees in religion, I think for similar reasons. And I
Yes.
also think part of that has to do with autism and trying to understand why I'm different from everyone else. Like
Hmm.
why is there this default expectation in language and set of rules that both are and are not spoken, um, that people seem to know, except for me, that I get in trouble
Exactly.
because I'm not following the not spoken rules. Why is there rules?
Oh, yes. And I was so glad to be out of academia. I felt that whenever I cracked one set of rules, there was another set of hidden rules that I
Mm-hmm.
could never crack even after 20 years. And oh,
Yeah.
talk about that being stressful.
Yeah.
So,
There's so much
yeah.
energy we can reclaim for other things. Like, if you're
Hmm.
not spending your whole day autistically masking, you can like come up with cool ideas instead.
Exactly. You
It's
can
great.
spend your energy doing 15 projects in one trench coat like you do. Well, and as well, your podcast, what was really interesting when I came as a guest on your podcast is that your podcast is kind of streamed on Twitch. And I will be very clear that I don't know anything about streaming. And you're a Twitch affiliate and you're part of this Disabled Content Creators Collective on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there, like you said, there's this whole community. It's not just the podcast, it's not just streaming, it's this whole community of people. So, tell us a little bit more about what, you know, what does streaming mean for you? Like, why are you a Twitch affiliate? Why streaming? Yeah, let's start from there. I've got more
Yeah.
questions, but let me ask
Yeah.
one question at a time.
Yeah. So what I love about live streaming is it's hacks my perfectionism. Like,
Mm,
if you produce something live, it cannot be perfect. There's no way. It just can't be. Um, and I so all the time that I would spend editing, making it perfect, polishing it up, making it, whatever, I don't have to spend that time and energy anymore. It's like, well,
beautiful.
what happened is what happened. We get to move on. And okay, like, the podcast itself, it's live streamed and we do edit it for publishing. But I
Hmm.
have some friends who are very generous with me and have decided to be my podcast editors. So I don't have to do that part. Because if I do that part, one, I'm not very proficient at operating the software. Two, I will get so like inundated with trying to make it perfect that I don't make progress on things. Um, and so being able to hand that off to others who like, if you're editing your own VODs, you may stumble into gender dysphoria as a trans person. If you have vocal
Yes.
dysphoria, you're hearing your own voice, you're seeing your face. And if it's like my face doesn't look to my eyes how it does in my mind, you have all of this disconnect and you just get caught in spirals about it. And so, one of the most beautiful things that's happened to me is trans people on the internet editing each other's VODs because we cannot stand to look at ourselves right now for gender dysphoria reasons. So it's just like, I don't care what you look like. Like, that doesn't affect my heart and soul. Like, I'm here for, I will compliment you on how handsome or beautiful you are, depending on your gender flavor. But like, it's not, it's different, right, than your own stuff. Because you don't have to deal with other people's inner critics. You only have to deal with your own. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
you
that
know,
is, well,
it's
done.
it's just
Mhm.
so yeah. So live streaming, we do the talk show on Mondays, and that's our like super gendery content. But then the rest of the week, so we stream Monday through Thursday. We have like video games, and sometimes it's cooperative with friends, and so then I get to hang out with friends on stream. And I grew up. I was born in '89, so I grew up in the '90s.
Mhm.
Playing video games, and my sibling was there, and we'd play together. And I do the controller part, and like she would give me like instructions, like, okay, try look at that thing over there that you missed, or what about this? And so we'd like play it together, and it's really nostalgic for me to be able to do that with other people and to share a game and that experience. There's also folks who either aren't proficient enough at a particular game to play it themselves, or they don't have the money to buy the
Mhm.
game. And so then there's like community about it because we all get to hang out together and have this shared experience. And because it's live, there's instant communication between me and the audience, right? It's not I make a video, people leave comments, I come back a month later and there's a comment and I write back. It's a conversation. And so it really does feel like that living room of the like LGBTQ center where we're just vibing. Somebody turn the Xbox on, we're all sitting there, eating chips, doing whatever. So it's nice to have like a community space that's focused on fun. We also
Yeah.
do a ton of activism, and I'm sure we're going to get there soon. But like, it's nice to have it not only all be activism. It's nice to have fun and be relaxed and like practice play together as well. there's so many things to be stressed about, especially with how trans rights are going in the United States right now.
Mm,
And having a space where we're not ignoring that, but it's like it has its time and its place, and the rest of the time, we're focused on fun and rest, because that's what we need to regulate, is that rest and that fun. So
mhm.
that's what we do. It's, I don't know, I would almost call it sacred clowning, but I feel like I don't know enough about clowning to say that with authority.
I don't know if it's sacred clowning, but it sounds pretty sacred to me because, like you said, that there's a lot to worry about. There is a lot to get stressed about right now, and always, I feel, in a way. But having those spaces where we can just connect, where we can relax, where we can play games, like you said, is so important. And I also love what you said about live streaming hacks your perfectionism. And that's one of the
Mm.
reasons why I've done produce my own. I would be very bad at producing my own podcast because I'm not the most. I am pretty good with technology, but I feel like I'm getting to the point where technology is just keeps growing and I'm getting older and it's harder to catch up. But also, I love what you said about gender dysphoria because that's how I feel
Mm.
whenever I listen. People are always, oh, I could listen to you for hours, and I cannot stand to listen to my own podcast because I don't want to hear my
Mm.
voice, my
Yeah.
guest voice. Great. But,
Hmm.
whenever I listen for a bit, I'm like, oh, is that how I sound? That's not how I sound in my head, which is interestingly
Hmm.
both about gender and my accent. With English
Mm.
not being my first language, I always sound like I don't sound like I have a heavy accent in my head. But then when I listen to
Mm.
myself, I'm like, oh, that is so different from what I hear. It's fascinating.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that was a total tangent. So
No, it makes sense. It was just a response. It wasn't a total tangent. It was a response.
yes. So let's go back to that piece of also community building and mutual aid. You've been doing a
Hmm.
lot of mutual aid organizing, really supporting people, whether they're fundraising for body modification interventions or other things. So yeah, how did that start? Was that organic from the community? Was it your idea? Yeah,
Oh
how did it
man,
start?
it's it's that type of activity has just been in my heart and soul as long as I can remember. To be honest, it's just part of who I am. It's part of,
Mhm.
like, for things to be right and fair in the world, we need to share. It's very Robin Hood.
Mhm. Yes.
um, And so, even as far back as that tabletop group, like,
Mhm.
there was a member in the community who had some, like, housing needs. Like, I need furniture, I need stuff. Like, and when you're trans, chosen family of origin may or may not be
Mhm.
cool with it. Sometimes you lose access to ancestral wealth. And
Yeah.
that's a huge summary of that whole problem. But, um, sometimes we have to do for ourselves what the rest of our society or family or other methods won't do.
Mhm.
Especially if you're a trans woman of color and you don't have access to funding and banking and whatever the way that a white, able-bodied, cis het person would.
Mhm.
Um, and so, you know, even as far back as then, I was organizing our little D&D group to, like, collectively get some money together to help this person with some housing stuff. And so, in any community, if you have a community that has any degree of, like, emotional intelligence and sharing and intimacy, people's needs are going to arise. You're going to hear about them because you're sharing about your life, and that includes your struggles and your hardships. And so, even as far back as 2 years ago, we were doing events for someone needed FFS, so we did a special stream to help raise money for her FFS. We did charity streams to try and raise money for, like, the Black Trans Women's Network in the greater
Mhm.
Seattle area. Um, just all kinds of these little pieces. I've gotten better at this skill with time and practice because, I've learned several things. One, anytime you donate to charity, there's always some of that money gets eaten up in fees, right?
Yeah.
Because charities
Mhm.
have a burden of tax documentation. They have to do all of this stuff. Plus, if they need to pay their staff, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's,
General
I'm not
operating
saying,
funds. Mhm.
right. And that's not
Yeah.
bad. Like, those people are doing great work in the world. And if your option is nothing or charities, absolutely do charities. But there's this additional option that I would say many white people in particular don't know about. Um, there's plenty of other demographics and reasons you might not know about it, but I have noticed, especially in white spheres, we tend to go, oh, I have extra money from work, I should give it to a charity. And it's like, there's this other thing, though, that you're not thinking about that maybe you should consider. And so I'm trying to lovingly invite our audience today to think about that. So this other piece is called mutual aid. And mutual aid is basically giving money directly to the person who needs it. You don't have it in between. You don't have a charity. You don't have, a broker in the middle. And yeah, you don't know how that person's going to spend that money at the end of the day, right? They might say they're going to use it for XYZ and then use it for ABC over there. But like, the people know what they need.
Exactly.
And if they are participating in community, if they show up, if they communicate, they know what they need. Just like me as a trans person, like I know what I need medically, like transition wise. I know what I'm looking for in a surgery. I don't want a surgeon who's going to offer me things that I'm not looking for. I'm okay to hear options I haven't heard of or considered. But if I've made up my mind, I don't want to be talked into something else, like because the surgeon's more comfortable with that option for whatever reason. And so similarly, all people have the dignity and human worth to know what they need and to be able to ask for it without a bunch of caveats, without a bunch of, well, we'll give you the money if you guarantee you spend it this way, if it's like credit to a specific store or specific place, whatever, any of that stuff. And so, when you engage in mutual aid, you are giving the person who needs the money that money directly, and often they get it faster than if they would go through these other charity-based entities because there's not all of that processing time. So the turnaround on our events is somewhere between 7 to 10 days because the payout is it's on a Monday and there has to be 7 days since you did it. So it might be if you do it on a Monday, it'll be the next Monday. If you do it on a Saturday, it'll be 2 Mondays from then. You know what I mean? It depends on where in the week it lands. But waiting 10 days is still way less waiting time than most charities if you are a recipient of money from a charity. It's not this huge months-long process and all of the paperwork and all the stuff. And so, the other thing is, like, you can raise money for anything if it's mutual aid. Like, when it's a charity, they're pretty locked into whatever their topic or special focus or whatever is, and there's very specific rules about, well, we can pay for this, but we can't pay for travel or whatever it is. And so, I founded this stream team called Gender Federation, and our goal is to put on mutual aid events to fund trans gender affirming care, specifically surgeries. There's a lot of trans needs, including housing and HRT, but we're focused pretty heavily on surgeries specifically because it's my experience personally that getting to have your procedure or procedures, let's be real, there's almost all trans people could have more than one procedure if they, qualify medically, right? Some people have enough pre-existing conditions, they're not a good candidate for surgery. But for those who are seeking a top or a bottom surgery, even if your insurance covers the procedure itself, or 90% or 80% of the procedure itself, there's still time off work. There's still paying anyone who's going to help you. There's buying any sort of pillows, materials, binders, packers, like other medical devices you need to take care of your body afterwards. There's the food, there's time away, there's travel to and from the hospital. If you need to stay in a hotel or an Airbnb for 1 to 4 weeks or 6 weeks even after your procedure, depending on how, huge it is. My wife's bottom surgery, I think we were in that town where the surgeon was at least 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And then she had to travel out again 3 months later and, all of that. And so, like, there's just all of this stuff that insurance doesn't cover. And if you are working class, like many ADHD people are, right? Like, we have a hard time getting high paying jobs because our brains are a certain flavor. And the only wealthy ADHDer I have met is software engineers. Basically, the rest of us are just doing 100 projects and we make beans, and we're lucky if we end up marrying a software engineer like I did. But a lot
Mhm.
of us, not all of us, but a lot of us tend to be working poor. We
That's
tend to
true.
be working class. And
Mhm.
so, taking multiple time off for surgeries can be hard. So it's like,
Mhm.
tell your physician, like, I want more than one surgery at one time or in one window of time so that I'm only taking off work the one time. And, that has varying levels of approval or not, because some surgeons are like, I don't want to take that risk. You need
Yeah.
healing time in between. And it's like, but I will literally not be able to have the other surgery ever or for 5 years because I can't take time off like that again. And
Yeah.
so there's this microcosm of all these different pieces to consider at once. And, different surgeons have different levels of willingness to
Mhm.
accommodate that intersection. So,
Absolutely. Mhm.
yeah. So why mutual aid? Mutual aid because there's all of these type of needs that, you know, it's not as easy for a nonprofit to cover and flex and meet, and it's faster.
Mhm.
It still takes us time to plan the events, but they still, get the money directly.
And it's so fewer hoops to jump through as well, right?
Hmm.
Because there can be so many hoops to jump through when it's a charity. And like you said, it's so restrictive where, if you have surgery, maybe you need to get more takeout because you can't cook or you
Right.
don't have enough local people to do a meal train or something like
Yeah.
that. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there are all sorts of needs that are not covered by insurance. And, yeah, and I know how stressful it is when you. I was lucky enough to be in a job that allowed me to take the time I needed for top surgery. I was still an academic at the time, and even then, when I got back, I was exhausted. I couldn't do full days for like another 2 or 3 weeks. So
Hmm.
it takes a long time to recover. And like you said, a lot of people, a lot of trans people are very underemployed. They're often in kind of more gig economy or paid hourly. And so there's actually, no money coming in while they
Hmm.
recover. And
Yeah.
we still live under capitalism. Rent has to be paid,
Yeah.
bills have to be paid, and it's a lot. And I love that you do mutual aid kind of as part of this community. And like you said, it really is this kind of online LGBTQIA to Spirit Plus Center
Hmm.
for trans and disabled folks. And I know that you have this kind of ethos, it looks like, that to really centers, some of the people who are most impacted, like trans disabled folks, folks of color. And so,
Hmm.
how do you manage to maintain a community where there really is a sense of connection online? Because I think sometimes people online can feel a little bit disconnected from others or be a little bit sharper to other people because it's almost there's an aspect of not seeing people in their total humanity, maybe on social media.
Hmm.
And so, how do you manage to maintain a community that does center kind of care and respect and mutual support?
Yeah. Great question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
I'd say it's twofold. The first part is, the main sort of community conversations are either happening on my Twitch live streams or in the Discord server. And
Hmm.
both of those spaces are moderated. That's why moderated
Yeah.
is in my bio, because,
Yes.
we have our community agreements, and there are people keeping an eye out and calling people in or banning people if they're just being totally belligerent. But we have mods dragoning the space and taking care of
Hmm.
us. And so, like, that plus my community tends to be neurodivergent, disabled, and trans, often
Hmm.
all three. Um, the the BIPOC piece is not as strong, but I'm white, so that's fair.
Makes sense.
we
Yeah.
are we are we are definitely anti-racist, and um, you know have components and pieces of the community that are tending to those pieces. And usually communities tend to reflect the leadership of the community. And so I am non-binary, transmasculine, autistic, ADHD, disabled, in a couple of different flavors. And so, like, I have the power to make my community fit me, right? And
Hmm.
so my community is friendly to people who are like me. And so, we have a lot of autistic folks, so we use tone tags, which expresses, what's the intention or tone behind this? And since so many of us are autistic, there's not a lot of double language, secret, hidden agenda, whatever. Like if people are mad, they'll be like, slash frustrated or something.
Yeah.
Like they'll just tell you straight up, like in the tone tag, like I'm mad. Like
Yeah.
What's more common is people get in their heads and have all of this trauma from being in a neurotypical world. And so they think people are mad at them when no one is mad at them. That is way more common than people actually being mad at each other. Is just this anxiety, stress, and fear of people being frustrated at each other. And then, what comes with that. And so there's a lot of like, people being able to say like, hey, my RSD is flaring, which that's shorthand for rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which there's also arguments on the internet about if dysphoria is the right word. I'm not trying to get into that argument. It's just that's the phrase people are using. I do think RSD is actually just trauma, but trauma is a big umbrella, and RSD is an easier shorthand. So if someone's, feeling rejected and the feelings that go with that, we can communicate that or take space and come back later. And the beauty of having an online community is it's always available. So you can take time and think about your response. That's part of why having community in writing is great, because you can edit it. You can think about it. You don't have to say the next thing that pops out of your mouth, regret it later, and you can't take it back, right? Like you can actually like figure it out. And so it's moderated, and our neurotypes are similar. And so our communication styles are similar. It's not identical, but like more than one of us are stimming. We even have a channel that's just about like noises and sounds and words that we think are fun to say because it's a stim.
Yes.
And so it's just like this like trans autistic joyland where we hang out and be all autistic at each other. It's great.
I love that. Transautistic Joyland. I think I want that on a t-shirt or something. That's amazing.
It's very
I
fun.
mean, you do also have cute merch, I think, for
thank you.
So I was like, oh, that would fit in really well.
I love that. Yeah, I'm going to be giving away the cat hug emote. It's like this design so this is my mouse pad. But I'm going to be giving away stickers with this design on it that say GenderMeowster at the bottom at Trans Pride Seattle, which is the middle of June, kind of towards the end of June. Might be the 4th Friday in June in Seattle.
Yeah, if you're in Seattle, go get...
Stop by the booth.
Those
I'll
are
give you
so
a cute sticker.
Exactly. And for those of you who are listening, you'll just have to follow the links in the episode description to go and look at all the... cute merch if you want to, but it was
my link tree has all the stuff.
Exactly. I think the map that you showed is like just the cutest drawing of a cat holding a heart with the non-binary flag.
Yeah, and the cat is Calico cute. Because my cat is Calico, Nefertiti.
Makes sense.
She's 11 this year.
Oh wow! Yeah,
super cute.
Super cute. So talking about care and community, I was thinking about the fact that you mentioned you have 2 degrees in the divinity, right? In divinity school or whatever. It almost sounds, in a way, it's an online kind of trans and queer center, but it almost sounds like, in a way, it's a kind of ministry. I don't know if that's the right word, or spiritual care or spiritual community of some kind, just because of the element of care. I don't know. Does that ever feel like that to you, or does it feel like totally separate?
I think like the energy of that is there, but we are definitely a multi-faith and or interfaith community.
That's why I was like, I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah. We have a spirituality channel. We have everything from pagans to Christians to Jews to Muslims to, haven't seen anyone post anything about Yoruba traditions, so that doesn't mean they're not around. So we actually, a couple of us have been having a chat about what if we had like pagan sabbats in the server and had like full moon rituals in the server. And I have not gotten my act together to plan that. I wish I could just deputize some other person to plan that and just show up. But I think I probably need to help out for at least the first 1 to 3 of them before we just hand it
Mm-hmm.
off. That's something that I've noticed is I typically need to help with the design of a thing before it can become sort of automated and someone else can do it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, so new things are often I'm the hindrance. I mean, if it's a trusted person and they feel like they have a plan, I'm happy to just be like, go for it. But oftentimes I've noticed people are more likely to want to do things if there's already an outline, there's already a plan. That
That
sort
makes
of new
sense.
new thought,
Mm-hmm.
creating a new thing is challenging for people, but following a format is easier. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, so my undergraduate degree is in comparative religion, which is really
Yes.
studying people. Like I switched my degree 4 or 5 times before I picked religion. I think psychology, music, theater, and gender studies would have been my major if that was offered as a major at the time. It was only a minor. They
Mm-hmm.
might have a major now, um, but I do have a minor in theater and gender studies on top of my religion major because I can't pick. Yeah, it's super
Yeah.
fun.
I'm glad they in Italy they didn't have all those options. It's like, this is your degree, because otherwise I would have like 5 or 6 minors. And our oldest is like, with our current joke with each other, including her, is that she just keeps adding minors to her degree.
Hmm. I
So,
love that. That's
but
so
it's
fun.
really fun. I was like, go for it, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah. I there's so many things I want to talk about, and I also want to be respectful of your time. So I'm going to take a moment to like take a breath and kind of pick something to kind of ask you one more question around. Um, One of the things that you're part of is also this Disabled Content Creators Collective on Twitch.
Hmm. Yeah.
Could you say a little bit more to people who are listening and don't know anything about the Disabled Content Creators Collective?
Hmm.
What is it? Why did it feel important for you to be part of
Yeah.
it? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So Twitch is a live streaming platform,
Mm-hmm.
and you have 3 different levels of users. You've got just a basic account, and then you've got a Twitch affiliate, which means you have to hit certain milestones in terms of your streaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have streamed 7 days in a month, you have at least 50 people following you, 50, and you have a concurrent viewership of 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
So you're on average. So usually you want
Yeah.
to aim for 5 to 7 to get that average of 3. Um, and then beyond that is Twitch Partner, which has even more challenging things.
Mm-hmm.
75 concurrent viewership.
Oof.
I don't know if there's a follower requirement. Um, and there's also a bunch. You have to do a certain number of hours in a certain number of days. But the concurrent viewership is often the most challenging for folks to hit
Mm-hmm.
consistently enough for it to count, because I think it's over a full month that you need that viewership at a certain spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this other thing on Twitch called Teams, where you can create a group of people that are working together. You have a web page that's on Twitch's website that lists everyone who's on your team. And typically those teams will organize to support each other and do what folks have to do.
Yes.
So because we are a disabled collective of people, we are more understanding about energy and spoons and being
Mm.
inconsistent. A lot of teams are not as justice oriented around disability, and so they have other expectations because what the algorithm wants is consistency and a certain size, a certain community size, a certain concurrent viewership. And so, being on a team and with a group of people who work together, to make these things happen without all of the expectations that a more able-bodied group would have is way better for me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
yeah. So at the end of a live stream, typically what you do is you raid a community. So you take your audience
Mm.
and you plonk them in front of whoever you choose to go see. And so you can kind of build viewership like that. And so over this last weekend, I'll tell you about the event we just finished because it was
Mm-hmm.
wildly successful and I would like to brag.
Yes, go for it. I love a good brag.
So we did an event with DC3, which is Disabled Content Creators Collective,
Mm-hmm.
for my friend Kamesy, who's a streamer out of South Africa. And I don't know if you know this, Alex, but South Africa has had rolling blackouts
Mm-hmm.
every day for the last 16 years.
Yeah.
It's called load shedding. It started in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And anywhere from 8 to 13 hours a day, Kamesy doesn't have power in her house every day
Yeah.
of her life. And it has to do with the infrastructure in South Africa. And the reason the infrastructure is crumbling has a lot to do with governmental corruption. And it's a whole big sob story. We
Yeah.
have the Ask video on Kamesy's YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Kamesy spelled Kaemsi for anyone who'd like to go check out Kamesy's YouTube. But Kamesy's Ask video is on there. It kind of explains the situation. And so we planned a big mutual aid raid train. So it was a combination of the Clouder, which is my community. And
Mm-hmm.
my community is larger than average. I at first I look like I'm a streamer and it's just me, but then if you stick around and pay attention, I have like several friends that will stream to my channel for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I'm away for one of me or my wife's trans surgeries or whatever. Like there's so many reasons, right? And so I almost run my channel like it's a broadcasting network instead of just a me
Mm-hmm.
channel. And so this event was put on by the Clouder, which is my community. It was also put on by the Disabled Content Creators Collective, which is my stream team, which has a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
different streamers in it. And then it was also put on by Plains Meld, which is these 3 streamers who decided to make one Discord server together because that's easier than each of them having to make their own, and they're all friends with each other. So they
Yep.
kind of share the work of that community moderation and maintenance with each other. And so those 3, plus me and my crew of people, plus my stream team, came together and recruited a bunch of our friends. And we had 27 streamers that streamed for, it was supposed to be 72 hours. It turned into 75 and a half hours because we
Wow.
added a marathon stream at the end. And we raised, I just saw the numbers, over $17,000 in a weekend.
That's amazing.
Which is ridiculous. So, and we funded all of Kamesy's goals, including the stretch goals for like stuff for streaming, hardware, and then we're like, as our pie in the sky, we're like, and if all of these needs are met, maybe we can buy a Nintendo Switch and Zelda for Kamesy, because all of us have been really wanting to see Kamesy play Zelda games, but there just haven't been the games to play. And so, so we even got that in the budget. It was amazing. And so, the last stream of this big raid train, we told folks, if we hit these milestones, we'll add time to the final stream. That'll be your incentive. Mm-hmm. And chat decided to be amazing and do that. And it was like the day before, I was like, I was making a budget and I was like looking up what's all the streamer gear that Kamesy needs. Let's price it out in Rand, which is the South African currency. Yep. How to like translate that into US dollars and then add 15% for like taxes and like
wire
foreign
transfer,
exchange fees and all of that other stuff. And so it was just like I had to do a big math TM, and I am not a math gay. Thankfully, there are math gays who are around, and they made me very fancy spreadsheets, and I just had to plug and drop things. And I was like, "Thank you, math gays."
Yes. Every team
so
needs
grateful.
one of those. Yes.
So, I came up with a budget. I recorded a new incentives video in the middle of the night, and my son even put captions on it for me at like 3 a.m. And there came a point where I realized that during that time when I was doing all of that, the community, without being incentivized further, was already hitting some of those goals. And I realized, heck, we're going to run out of stuff for people to throw money at, which is fine. But also, I also realized there's a lot of energy in the community at that moment, and I had a chance to throw out and ask for something that I've been waiting 6 to 12 months for, which is a wheelchair. And so at 3 or 4 in the morning in my pajamas in the living room, I'm very tired, and I just held my phone up to my face and record a short video that's me explaining, hey everyone, I need a wheelchair. I've started fundraising, crowdfunding for it back in November. Pride is next month. I would like to have the chair for Pride because it'll make tabling at Trans Pride a lot easier for me to participate and be present. And so we like threw it in the last 3 hours of this 72-hour event, and the community decided to go hard and one of the anonymous donations was over $1,000. It was like $1,020 or
That's
something ridiculous.
fantastic. Hmm.
And so we raised like an additional 2 or 3 grand. I think it was 2.2 maybe $1,000 for my wheelchair, like as an add-on. Like that wasn't even what we'd been planning, like
Hmm.
whatever. But we literally ran out of things for Kamesy that we could think of, and it was like, well, I was going to plan this mutual aid event in 2 weeks, but my wife's
Hmm.
having surgery on Friday, which is still true. Like in 2 days, we leave
Yeah.
tomorrow to sleep overnight in the city where
Whew.
it's happening. Um, my wife's having surgery on Friday, and I'm actually not going to have the time to plan this event. I was so to have the chair for Pride. So like this might be our moment if you're willing and the crowd is willing. So I even said in my video, like, I know your wallets are tired. Like if we don't do this now, I'll just do a thing later about it. But if you're willing, here's my need. And it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I totally cried on stream because not only was it just amazing that we funded Kamesy's thing, but like I thought I was going to have to do all this additional work for my thing, and it's like, no, actually, you can just put them together, and we'll just fund both of them for the lols. And so, like, it was so wild. It was so amazing, and um, I it made me realize that there are some strategies about this mutual aid fundraising thing where you have streams, you have milestones and
Hmm.
incentives on each stream. So each streamer and their micro communities have their goal, right? Which was $120 an hour. And
Hmm.
so, they would set their goals and their milestones based on that amount. But there were some streamers that are bigger names or have bigger
Yeah.
communities that way overshot that goal. And so
Hmm.
even there might have been 2 or 3 of our 27 streamers that didn't hit their goal. But the bigger streamers and the bigger energy of the event, like it didn't matter. Like we carried through and we got all of our stuff met, and you know it made me realize, in the future in organizing events for my stream team, the Disabled Content Creators Collective, what if we had a group of us who, let's get 6 people who need wheelchairs together,
Hmm.
and maybe 1 or 2 of those people are well
Yes.
known and well loved, and maybe
Hmm.
4 of those people are unknown entities. They're on the team, but people don't know them because they're small streamers.
Hmm.
It's hard for them to get on stream for whatever their disability reasons are, what have you. But people are going to love those 1 to 2 big names enough that they're going to go hard for those people, and all of those little guys, quote unquote, are going to get the benefit of that energy, even though they're not big names,
Hmm.
right? It's like it makes me think of opening acts for major like concert events,
Yes,
right? Like
absolutely.
some
Hmm.
unknown person is on stage and all of a sudden they're getting all of this exposure because everyone's there to see Lizzo. And so it's like, oh, well, now we know about you too, like,
And we're gonna buy your
um,
CDs. That's great. Yeah, absolutely.
so it's just, finding ways to use community and working together to
Mm,
get these needs solved. Because if everyone does their own individual event, that goes one way. But if we pool not only our energy together, but like our social communities together, not only are we raising the money piece, which is kind of where it starts, but there is this community of people that gets formed in the pressure and intensity of the event, right? Because we're working really hard together for a focused amount of time. Um, that like those communities, like we tend to visit each other's channels more often ever since the
mhm,
event. We tend to like support each other in an ongoing way, whatever that is, like with, oh yeah, sure, I can start modding for your community. Oh yeah, I can raid into your channel. Oh my gosh, so and so is live. Let's go say hi to them. Like there's just this like it's building community, it's building connection, it's building our web of care. And because it's online, like it's not as vulnerable to physical attack, right?
mhm,
Which is me getting back to the politics in the United States. So that's one of the major differences between having an online community, be it trans, disabled,
mhm,
both, or something else. Like by being physically in different locations, it is much harder to tear the entire thing down. It
absolutely.
is much harder for any one and like organization to lose all of its
Mhm,
steam because we're like my GenderMeowster crew, like we're in Japan, we're in Germany, we're in Canada, we're in the
mhm.
United States, we're in South Africa, like
Yeah.
we're all over the place, and we're in the UK. There's a bunch of people in the UK. I know I'm forgetting countries, so if any of my Clouder contributors are listening right now, I'm sorry if I forgot your spot. Um, but it's just it's so beautiful to have this international community of people who love each other and like work together on things. It feels
Mhm.
really special. Um,
Yeah.
You know, 2 or 3 years ago, I was working at the family business, and frankly, I don't know if I could have transitioned while I worked there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was already going by my name and my pronouns, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I could have medically transitioned while I worked there because, you know, the person in charge of HR was this Catholic guy who teased me about my pronouns when I was like, "Hey, could we do pronouns in our email signatures?" He actually like ridiculed me.
I'm sorry.
And my father, the president, like, in my opinion, did not do an adequate job of correcting him. Like,
Mm.
you know, it was not really, wasn't, I don't feel like there was a strong enough call out or call in,
Yeah.
or you need to go learn some things, or we're going to have a training
Yeah.
about
Or a
gender
training.
stuff.
Yeah. Mm.
And like, Meowster isn't going to be the one teaching it. Like, we're going to get a specialist in here to train everybody.
Yeah.
Like, none of that happened. Um, and so, like, thank goodness my wife came along and introduced herself at a summer solstice ritual that I invited her to.
Oh, lovely.
um, and like, she, it was really hard to leave that job, but we had a
Mm.
long talk about it, and we decided that she earns enough money that she could support the both of us. And never in my life did I imagine I would be a house spouse. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
always thought I was going to be poor and working hard, and my partner was also going to be poor and working hard. We were just going to do our
Mm-hmm.
best. And that was my plan for my life. And like, the universe decided, how about we give you a wife who is not only hot, but also incredibly smart and has a great job and loves you wildly. And you can just do your thing. It's like, every day I wake up, I'm so grateful for that,
Mm.
like, series of events that led to me being in the situation I'm in right now. And so every workday, I show up and advocate hard for the trans community because
Yeah.
I know not every trans person has the type of privilege that I do.
Yeah.
Not every trans person has the type of financial security or support from their spouse or partner or family that I do. And so I fight hard for everyone else who doesn't have the kind of support I do, because I would hope, if the roles were reversed, that whoever else was in a position of privilege would fight for me too. I'm still
Yeah.
disabled and trans. Like, I'm not the most privileged, but I have a lot of privilege comparatively. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I, that's why I go hard at work, because
Yeah.
you know, it's a special interest almost level of thing.
I love that. And I think that that is a reminder for that we're getting towards the end of our time, which
Yes.
is a beautiful place also to land on, to land to the in this place of like care and support. And now you're taking your care and support and then bringing it out into the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that the last question I always ask, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you really wanted to share with the Gender Stories listeners? And if there isn't, it's okay. But I always
Hmm.
like to ask, just in case I missed anything.
Um, you know, one of our newest things that I'm not very good at talking about is our Substack.
Mm-hmm.
We have a piece of writing that goes out. I think it's every week. My co-conspirator Lee puts those out. It's pronouns for Lee, and it collects, like, we have our solidarity resources piece, which has to
Mm-hmm.
do with intersectional solidarity resource information. We also have the writing about what's going on with the Clowder, and hopefully soon we will also have a monthly piece that goes out about our past genderful guests. So, like, hopefully you, Alex,
Nice.
will perhaps receive a monthly email that's like, "Hey, do you have any
Mm-hmm.
projects you want us to tell the Clowder about?" And
Mm-hmm.
so our Substack is a great way for folks to get sort of that written digest in your inbox about what's happening. If you're not
Mm-hmm.
really a Discord person, if you're like, I don't know about Twitch, but you want to be included, and I believe at least some of that writing has voiceover. I don't know if the Solidarity Resource posts do or not, and I could go ask about that. But we do try to make it as accessible as possible. So, of course, if at any time you notice an accessibility need, let us know, and we will do our best to do something with that. Um, one of the one of the most supportive things any of the listeners could do is go drop follows and likes and subscribes
Mm-hmm.
places. Like, even if you don't have the money to support the work that we're getting up to, which, you know, we also need money. We need to pay for the software we use. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't personally take a paycheck right now because my contributors are working so hard that if we have a little money left over for payroll, I would rather tip them, $10 across the 20 of them or whatever, instead of me taking money home. One time I did, and it's because my wife was having surgery and we didn't have her paycheck, and
That's
so it
fair.
was like it was the time. But I think in 3 years I've taken home about $1,000 from this project. So this is not about put money in Meowster's pockets. This really is
Yeah.
about just keeping the community going and those sorts of things. So I mean, people, if anyone who supports on Patreon, like that is recurring income we can count on. And if we hit a certain threshold on Patreon, we are hoping to be able to pay our talk show guests for their time and energy. And I would love to be able to do that. So, drop a subscribe on YouTube. We're about 300 subscriptions away from half of the requirements for monetizing on YouTube. We're already
That's right.
taking all this energy and all this time to publish there. Wouldn't it be great if we could earn ad revenue or something, like to feed our cats or pay for our HRT or whatever? Drop a follow on the Substack, leave a comment. Lee works really hard on those Substacks and almost no one is commenting on them because everyone's used to the audio video stuff. And so if anyone is more of a writing person, like, leaving a comment, even if it's not every single one, is really a thoughtful thing to do. If you'd like to be included in the community and get the fastest updates about events, being in the Discord server is the best way to hear announcements about live events you can be joining. We have events in the server in addition to on the Twitch stream. And you can drop follows for the Twitch channel and all the social media channels too. It's all in the link tree, which Alex has and will hopefully put in the description for you all.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
linktr.ee/GenderMeowster is that link tree. And it's possible we'll be adding more stuff that I haven't talked about today since the recording of this. Like if you're hearing this a year from now, check the link tree. There might be like a whole new thing I didn't even mention.
Exactly. Who knows? Maybe we'll be 16 or 20 projects in a trench coat by next year, and we'll have to have you on the show again. I will put that link tree link in the episode description on YouTube, on the episode description, because now we're both on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Nice.
And thank you so much. I feel this interview was so full of community care and trans autistic disabled joy, and just like my heart is really full, and I'm really grateful for your time and all the beautiful community care that you provide. Thank you so much for coming on Gender Stories and sharing all the beautiful work you do with us.
Thank you, Alex. It's been a pleasure. Don't forget to subscribe to this show and leave 5 stars. Okay, bye.
Thank you. And don't forget to subscribe to GenderMeowster's show and the Genderful podcast and the Substack and all the things.